Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Hilary Weaver, the Global Indigenous Commissioner for the International Federation of Social Workers. I am Lakota. We are one of the largest Indigenous groups from the United States. I'm going to be introducing our presentation today, Implementing Traditional Indigenous Knowledge in Social Work, Challenges and Possibilities. As I begin, I want to acknowledge that we all exist on Indigenous lands. I am speaking to you today from Onondaga territory, which is the western door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. That is in the western part of New York State in the United States. I encourage each listener to reflect on their own location and think about whose territory you live and work on. Our format today is a panel with members of the International Federation of Social Workers Indigenous Commission. I'm going to do an introduction before I turn it over to the panelists, and then I'll come back at the end with some brief concluding remarks. In 2021, the Indigenous Commission of IFSW was formed. This happened after many, many years of advocacy for social workers to have a voice, an Indigenous voice within the International Federation of Social Workers. On our commission, we have representatives from the 5 regions of the world: North America, South America, Africa, Asia Pacific, and Europe. Today, we have representatives from 3 of those regions who are going to be sharing their perspectives with you. It's not comprehensive. There are many other examples that could be shared, but I believe that the examples that you will hear today will be thought-provoking, and it will be very valuable for you to hear these examples. The global definition of social work that was approved in 2014 notes that, among other things, the profession is underpinned by Indigenous knowledges. Although this is articulated as foundational, in most parts of the world, social work services are grounded in general mainstream perspectives and are not inclusive of Indigenous knowledges or values. Indeed, many Indigenous approaches to helping continue to be undervalued and considered primitive. Likewise, most social work education continues to be grounded in colonial theories, thus perpetuating inequitable and culturally unresponsive service delivery. Many Indigenous people have a history of mistrust of social services and thus drop out of treatment that they experience as culturally irrelevant. We believe that Indigenous knowledges and approaches to helping have broad relevance, not just to Indigenous peoples, but they have the potential to assist many people from different backgrounds. Although Indigenous knowledges are considered part of the foundation of social work, we must question to what extent social workers value them and integrate them in practice. In this panel presentation, members of the IFSW Indigenous Commission will describe how Indigenous knowledges are or are not implemented in social work services in different parts of the world. Examples of implementation of Indigenous knowledges into services will be highlighted as models that we can all learn from. I will now turn to Carol Tanatipanya to share perspectives from the Asia Pacific region.
Tēnā koe, Hilary. Tēnā koutou katoa. And warm Pacific greetings to you all from Aotearoa, New Zealand. As Hilary said, my name is Carol Tanatipanya, and my family and tribal connections are in the Upper North Island from the tribe of Ngāpuhi. I am one of the 4 Asia Pacific Indigenous Commissioners, and I respectfully acknowledge my colleagues from Australia, China, and Malaysia who were unable to be with us today. I equally acknowledge all of the Indigenous peoples and practitioners across the Asia Pacific, the most expansive and diverse region of the IFSW. This region focuses primarily on social work responses to child trafficking, climate change, disaster recovery, and societies in conflict. Across the Asia-Pacific region, there are diverse examples where social workers apply traditional knowledge and cultural ways of being to a practice situation. Engaging in the natural world, in places of cultural significance, such as land, bodies of water, and spiritual places, all contribute to the strengthening of Indigenous values and approaches to our work. In Aotearoa, we have Indigenous wānanga delivering social work education, and we have extensive models of practice for social workers to draw on. But I want to draw your attention to the sacred space of the marae here in Aotearoa, a traditional meeting place, and the processes involved when welcoming guests into this space. We traverse space, time, and relationships as a critical component of the marae pōwhiri, our formal welcome into this space, which is essential in the engagement between social worker and whānau. And I want to share with you a short video which describes a very simple way that we as tangata whenua and Māori here in Aotearoa apply these basic principles of the marae into our social work practice.
Wero, establishing and or identifying issues. The ideology of Wero is to present issues and determine intentions. Though Wero is literally a challenge, it is a challenge delivered in an open, safe space where everyone is able to acknowledge the issues peacefully. The underlying principles are preservation of mana or dignity and transparency. We liken the Wero to providing safe spaces to work through the issues and obstacles of collaborative process. Reo Pōpiri, administration. Reo Pōpiri, or karanga, is the first voice heard on the marae. Reo Pōpiri sets the tone for the rest of the pōpiri and the reason people have gathered. We liken this process to establishing and outlining roles, responsibilities and boundaries within the collaborative process. The principles of Reo Pōpiri are transparency and open-mindedness. Reo Whakatau, establishing relations.
Mawhiti mai ko te rā, ka awa te ati hei, mauri ora.
It is important in pōpiri to identify yourself to the people you're engaging with, and that is the purpose of Reo Whakatau. Not just your name, but your genealogical connections, who you represent, the purpose of your presence and how your history has dictated your arrival at this point in time. This is establishing relations, and its collaborative application would be in being transparent in intentions and identifying common goals and aspirations, as well as the differences in perspective and methodology. Tūatu tū mai, unpacking issues. Tūatu tū mai literally translates to I stand, you stand, and is the right and opportunity for each party to present issues, stance, opinions and solutions. The underlying principles are obligation, due diligence and respect. Tūatu tū mai is the process for unpacking issues and requires compromise for all parties. It accepts that consensus isn't a solution if the parties are unbalanced and that collaboration relies on equity. Koha, reciprocity in practice. Koha is an action of the heart and shows compassion, empathy and commitment. Generally, it is either in the form of food, time, service or resource. The mainstream application would be the offerings each party make from a solution-focused mindset. Koha values all methodologies of achieving solution and identifies commitment to meaningful work, which is reflected as respect for facilitators, organisers and people who have worked towards a common goal. Harirū, networking. Harirū is the physical sharing of oxygen between two people. It is representative of coming together for a common cause and unity in practice. The mainstream application would be immersing ourselves in the thoughts and contributions of our counterparts to fully understand and appreciate each other's perspective, and acknowledging different solutions to the same issues. Hākari, strategies and timeframes. The partaking of food together when people are able to identify their relation to one another and speak casually and candidly. We liken this to removing our conversations from the boardroom context and allowing less structured types of engagements. The addition of food enables us to sit and eat together, building bonds and relationships outside of a working context in order to understand each other's backgrounds and how they shape our perspectives. Poroporoaki, implementing action plan. A farewell of sorts, it allows reflection on the kaupapa and gives people the opportunity to share new learnings, share gained experience, and offer the chance for further working relationships down the track. The working adaptation would be formalising the relationships built in discussion and aligning them to deliverables for each kaupapa, providing a timeline for the results of the collaborative process and keeping each other accountable to what we have agreed to. The ever-present tau kumekume, or positive and negative tensions that arise during collaborative exercises, aren't anything to be feared and should be difference that is embraced and celebrated. The key for any collaborative process are the underlying principles of manaakitanga, or enhancing each other's dignity, whakaute, or respecting perspectives, and haumarutanga, or providing safety for one another, be it physical, emotional, mental, and professional.
At this point in time, I acknowledge Manaaki Whenua Land Care Research and the iwi and hapu who have created this beautiful taonga for us to all learn from in our practice as Indigenous social workers. Ngā mihi kia rātou.
Thank you, Carol. Now we're going to go to our second panelist, Margareta Ucek, representing the European region.
Barbieve, mun omlemärke Kolbe Ucek, mun elebriagade med svarsane, upp med en samin lanta. Mun gitchub dan dite mun orum in dasne. Dear all, my name is Margareta Ucek. I'm Ume Sami from mountain area in northern Sweden, and I am the European representative in the IFSW Indigenous Commission. I am also a social worker and an associate professor at Umeå University in Sweden. I am speaking from Ume Sami area in northern Sweden, where I come from. Sami are the indigenous people of Europe, living in northern Europe. And I want to thank the organizers for having me here. Sweden has a very well developed welfare system, and so has also the rest of the Nordic countries, where all citizens have the same rights to support from this system. The Nordic Welfare Center has an important role in the Nordic countries to collaborate and to develop welfare system, working with including all citizens in the welfare system. However, in my previous work as a social worker, as well as in my research and meeting and working with my community and other Sami communities, I have seen that there are challenges in this welfare system regarding offering Sami relevant measures and other support to Sami who are in need of such support. A Nordic study coordinated by the Nordic Welfare Center showed that not only Sweden, but also Norway and Finland are facing challenges offering Sami with disabilities relevant support. The existing support is usually based on needs within mainstream society, with no regard to Sami knowledges. It could be about lacking Sami relevant measures and support in social services and healthcare, where Sami knowledge, language, and culture is not regarded. Sami could feel misunderstood and therefore withdraw from service or treatment. Some single examples have shown how the service could be of benefit for the Sami. That could happen if the Sami person told the professionals at the clinic or social services what help the person needed and how the professional could do or work in order to meet those needs. Other examples showed how children could feel isolated if they were in special schools for children with disabilities. These schools were mainly developed based on mainstream society, and the Sami child could feel isolated, losing their language and cultural expressions. Other examples showed how older Sami could be questioned in their indigeneity when they wanted their culture and knowledge included in their care. Yet other examples are about Sami women that were subjected to violence, and when relevant service and cultural recognitions were lacking. Therefore, the definition of social work stated by the International Federation of Social Workers, where indigenous knowledges shall be regarded along with theories in social science and humanities, are an important tool to implement for further development of relevant service and support to Sami. There are developments going on, which I see as hope for the future, and I will mention a couple of them. One example is a health clinic in northern Norway, where relevant support are offered to Sami, and several of the staff are Sami. Some healthcare regions in Sweden have established collaboration with this clinic in Norway, and therefore Sami from these regions in Sweden can go to Norway for relevant healthcare treatment. Other actions are going on to develop relevant support for Sami in Sweden as well. Another example is the Swedish National Agency for Education, who has developed the curriculum in the special elementary school with actions and activities for Sami students. And yet other support are mostly run by NGOs, Sami NGOs, where Sami are working voluntarily in their leisure time. And one such example is from northern Finland, where Sami sisters are working with various social issues. For example, they are working with families where one family member could have addiction issues, and they are working in nature, close to nature, in this development of relevant support. Finally, I would like to put forward the importance that in this development, it is important to recognize that Sami own their own issues and define their own needs, and that Sami are asking for Sami staff in the welfare system. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Margareta. Now we will go to our third and final panelist, Jenny Linares.
Buenas tardes. Reciban el saludo de la región de América Latina y el Caribe, de los 18 países que lo conforman. Estoy como representante del Comité Indígena de estos países, ¿no? Y desde que hemos empezado a realizar un trabajo de acercamiento a los pueblos indígenas y hacia las comunidades, ¿no? Hemos podido observar las necesidades que se presentan y la relación que pueden existir entre los trabajadores sociales y estas comunidades para poder tener un trabajo conjunto, un trabajo colectivo, un trabajo que permita que a partir del conocimiento ancestral y del trabajo colectivo, ¿no? Los conocimientos que se adquieren puedan irse agrandando hacia estas comunidades, ¿no? Y hasta esa relación que puede existir desde el trabajo social y el conocimiento indígena. Si bien es cierto, en la región de América Latina hay población y hay pueblos indígenas andinos, ¿no? Que tienen muchísimas necesidades, ¿no? Y lo que se busca justamente es el buen vivir, ¿no? Los principios organizativos de la vida social que tienen están justamente orientados a restituir la unidad y un equilibrio entre la comunidad y la naturaleza. Y ahí parte la intervención del trabajo social con estas comunidades, con estos pueblos originarios, para poder plantear una producción de defensa de la vida en la comunidad, de respeto con el medio ambiente, bajo los principios de reciprocidad, de complementariedad, de solidaridad, elementos que hacen muy importantes los aprendizajes y las formas en las que nos podemos integrar con otras poblaciones, con otras comunidades, partiendo de allí para poder legitimizar el conocimiento indígena, el conocimiento de la cosmovisión que tienen, ¿no? Y lo que podemos desarrollar para el bienestar del ser humano, de la naturaleza, en su relación que existe, ¿no? Dentro de las diferentes organizaciones para buscar justamente el desarrollo de políticas de igualdad. Consideramos de que la educación y la salud son puntos básicos, son puntos muy importantes en los cuales los trabajadores sociales estamos en permanente contacto con estos pueblos originarios, sobre todo en estos tiempos de pandemia de COVID. Ha sido el momento propicio para poder entablar estas relaciones de comunicación, estas relaciones de integración con ellos para poderlos ayudar en las necesidades que se iban presentando, ¿no? Y que era necesario también compartir con estas poblaciones que son muy vulnerables en la región de América Latina. Justamente trabajo social tiene que estar muy integrado hacia estas comunidades porque tenemos que afinar que se desarrollen procesos democráticos, procesos de integración entre las naciones, entre sus habitantes, ¿no? Que no estén ausente, que no esté ausente la mirada hacia esta población, hacia esta comunidad. Es necesario que haya un bienestar social que llegue para ellos también, ¿no? Y desde el trabajo social se busca justamente que exista un diálogo intercultural con el respeto hacia lo ancestral, hacia su arte, hacia su cultura, ¿no? Particularmente hacia la organización que tienen por la enseñanza, por el trabajo que se realiza con los niños, con los jóvenes, ¿no? Y el trabajo que se ejecuta también con las poblaciones adultas, ¿no? Dentro de todas las problemáticas complejas que se presentan en un marco de dificultades que se pueden dar dentro de estos grupos precisamente por la marginación o discriminación de las que pueden ser víctimas. Dentro de ella, el proceso justamente de drogas, de adicciones, de alcoholismo, de violencia, de maltrato hacia la mujer, del embarazo de niñas, de adolescentes, ¿no? Y que es ahí donde se realiza un trabajo de prevención hacia las zonas de la comunidad en el primer nivel de atención de salud y en educación, buscando que se respete la lengua, el dialecto de cada una de estas comunidades, ¿no? Desde los espacios educativos de los niveles de educación inicial, primaria, secundaria, los espacios universitarios, donde a veces también se realiza este tipo de discriminación. Y los trabajadores sociales ahí tenemos un gran trabajo para poder realizar con ellos un marco de defensa de sus derechos, ¿no? Y de diferencia cultural por las necesidades que tienen y que, como decimos, tenemos que buscar esa igualdad y esa no exclusión de las comunidades originarias.
Quiero dar pase a Ronnie para que pueda hablar y presentar también a quien me acompaña en estos momentos, a Giovanna Yalán Cabello. Ronnie, por favor, si pudieras acercarte. Acércate, puedes sentarte acá. Sí.
Muchas gracias. Hakuyandan hatibi. Nungujado Riki Runinkushi. Ya Riki, artista, activista de la comunidad Shipibo Conibo de Cantagayo. Acabo de saludarles en mi idioma. Muy buenas tardes a todos ustedes conectados que me están viendo ahora. Mi nombre es Runinkushi, que significa en castellano anaconda poderosa. Yo soy activista, artista de la comunidad Shipibo Conibo de Cantagayo, donde representamos nuestra cultura, nuestra sociedad por medio de nuestros artes. Kikinkupi, Anamburti Itai, Iskikanun Hatu, Winkibiki. Nun Ashe, Hakiwibu, Nun Amishanabi. Nuaja, Amishuai, Nun Chupikupi, Nun Sawikupi, Hawiskitihai Kupinui. Bakijanobu, Haskarani, Bankibu, Nun Ashebu. Yariki quien agradecido que na tu oportunidad. Es muy valioso que a través de los profesionales del trabajo social busquemos las alianzas y a la intervención para que siga trascendiendo la cultura indígena, el sentir, el pensamiento y lo valioso del ancestral, la religiosidad. No discriminar a nadie de este grupo de población por la vestimenta y otros, para que los jóvenes sigan difundiendo todo lo de la cultura originaria indígena de su comunidad. También quiero expresar el agradecimiento muy especial con el Colegio de Trabajadores Sociales del Perú, que se han contactado con nuestra comunidad y nos han apoyado con la compra de nuestro arte tradicional, nuestro textil. Si ven en la parte de atrás, hay un manto muy grande que está bordado. Ese manto lleva los conocimientos de nuestros ancestros, que nos han enseñado nuestros abuelos, nos han enseñado nuestras madres de generación en generación. En esos mantos nosotros plasmamos nuestro conocimiento, el conocimiento de la selva, el conocimiento de los animales, que son muy importantes para nuestra selva, para nuestro país y para el mundo entero. Me siento muy agradecido por la participación que ustedes me están brindando y acá con las dos grandes amigas que me tuvieron, que fueron a mi comunidad a visitarme. Fueron y fue muy grata la sorpresa y que hoy día de nuevo llegaron ayer y me invitaron a esta conferencia internacional. Así que muchas gracias. Y antes de despedirme quería cantarles una canción de energía en mi idioma para que les llene de energía a todos ustedes. Y empiezo así. Oye, Winnie, amawe Reo Kinkushi Kushi Winnie amawe Reo Kinkushi Muramuskati Jibi Muramuskasakiti Muramuskati Jibi Muramuskasakiti Haskaranu Itamu Reo Kinkushi Haskaranu Itamu Reo Kinkushi Nunkunkushi Pinawe Nunkunkushi Hakiti Nunkunkushi Pinawe Nunkunkushi Hakiti Y Chabreziraki, muchas gracias a cada uno de ustedes. Esperemos vernos muy pronto y les dejo aquí la palabra a las amigas. Muchas gracias. Bueno,
Many thanks to our panelists for the words that they have shared and the videos that they have shared with us. Throughout this panel, you've heard members of the IFSW Indigenous Commission describe how Indigenous knowledges are or are not implemented into social work services in their regions. They've also shared models that we can learn from and apply in our work. We can take what we've learned and modify it so it's appropriate for our various regional contexts. Indigenous knowledges are recognized as foundational in the global definition of social work. We have opportunities to do more to fully integrate them in our work. We challenge each of our listeners to consider how they can find support in the global definition of social work to strengthen inclusion of Indigenous knowledges in service provision. This is essential as we strive to co-build a new eco-social world and leave no one behind. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope you enjoy the rest of the Global People's Summit, and we look forward to receiving and responding to your questions and comments.